Welcome back to World Talks with me, Anna Kalczyńska. Good morning. As the first 3 hostages were released on Sunday evening, the peace between Israel and Hamas is far from being secured. Both sides reached an agreement on an initial 6-week truce, which leaves the big questions unresolved. In 16 days into the first phase, the Israeli and Hamas officials are expected to begin negotiating next steps, an end to the war, the release of the remaining living hostages from Gaza, and the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the territory. To understand this fragile truce, I'm joined now by Veronika Poniscjakova, Senior Teaching Fellow, University of Portsmouth. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So let us start with the implications of the release of the first hostages. What are they for the broader ceasefire agreement?
Well, first of all, I would say that this does represent a commitment to the deal, as fragile, as shaky as it may be. It also perhaps gives us a hint of what we may expect in the future. We saw issues on the day that there were some delays, and that Hamas may, at the end of the day, they may just break the truce. So I think this is what we can expect in the next weeks to come, that the agreement could fall apart really, really quickly, that there could be some last-minute changes, and the whole thing could just break down completely.
So 15 months of the war, one of the most tragic in the history of both sides. What goals have been achieved by the State of Israel?
I think I will be quite cynical here, because I would say that what we can see here, it's quite bittersweet, because the war objectives included release of all the hostages and also military and political defeat of Hamas. Well, Hamas has not been defeated, definitely not politically, not militarily. If anything, I think we can see that, Hamas's image or position has been bolstered rather than anything else. And also hostages, not all of them have been released yet. They may not get released if the agreement breaks down. And many of these hostages, many of the remaining hostages, we can expect to be found dead rather than alive. So I don't see this as a victory for Israel at all.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the problems with releasing the remaining hostages. What challenges do you foresee in securing the release of those remaining hostages by Hamas?
I think it will, again, depend on Hamas and whether they will be able to stick to the deal. So that would be one of the challenges, that they may change their mind quite quickly, especially if they feel any pressure from their biggest sponsor, from Iran. Then I'll think there will be some domestic pressures on the Netanyahu government as well. There are many critics to the deal. Many people are citing the repercussions from the previous deal from over a decade ago, the Gilad Shalit agreement, when one soldier was released in exchange for 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, many of them terrorists, one of them being the quote-unquote mastermind behind the October 7th attack. So the critics are already saying that there will be some serious security repercussions of the current deal, that 1,000 or possibly more, we will see what the second phase will bring. 1,000 prisoners, Palestinian prisoners, are being released from Israeli prisons. Many of them are convicted terrorists. So this is going to have some major implications on Israel's security going forward.
So just as you mentioned and you rightly pointed out, Hamas has not been destroyed, neither politically nor militarily. This aim has not been achieved. We've seen pictures of Hamas militants fanned out in Gaza with rifles in their hands in a show of authority. So how likely is that the negotiations for a permanent ceasefire and withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza can succeed?
If Hamas, if they feel that they are strong enough, because again, it has taken a couple of months to get back to the position where they are now. Whilst they did suffer some losses, some also militarily and in terms of personnel, for example, they seem to be pretty strong at the moment. But if they feel that they're strong enough, if they secured enough of their objectives, if they feel that they've achieved victory in their eyes, they could break the deal right away and attack Israel. And also, I think we need to look into the future as well. It's not just about what's happening now, but what Hamas could do in the future. The deal currently, it gave Hamas essentially reward for perpetrating the massacre on October the 7th. The main message here is do something atrocious, you're going to get something in exchange, and you're not going to get removed from power. So they only have an incentive to perpetrate another terrorist attack in the future.
Is this really so? I mean, so many people have been killed and the whole territory has been destroyed, devastated. So it's really hard to say that Hamas has been rewarded in any possible measure.
They were rewarded in a sense that they're, they haven't been defeated, as in one of the earlier requirements was that Hamas is completely removed from power. They haven't been. So they can survive. That was one of their objectives. And also that they are getting the reward in terms of the political prisoners and terrorists released from Israeli prisons. In terms of the Gazan population being killed, I would argue they then don't really care about the people. But they care about the political optics, and the political optics is that the group is still very much alive. So that is all they care about.
47,000 people killed and Gaza completely ruined. But coming back to the goals of Israel, is it even achievable to achieve both goals of the war, bringing home the hostages and to destroy the Hamas at the very same time?
Not at this point. You can only have either. You can only have one of them. By agreeing to this agreement, by getting the hostages back, Israel won't be in position to destroy Hamas again, because the deal does require Israel to withdraw from Gaza. We do not know what the next stages of the agreement will involve. For example, will it involve Israel losing the control of the Rafah crossing, and etc. But what I think we can expect is that Israel is going to lose the current control of the enclave that they have.
All right. Now, coming back to the situation inside the government, Mr. Netanyahu, the decision to accept a temporary ceasefire opened deep fissures. We have seen Itamar Ben-Gvir, the far-right national security minister, who resigned in protest from the cabinet and withdrew from the coalition. So what's the future prospect for peace with the government crisis in Israel?
It's going to be very complicated. So Ben-Gvir, that's one thing. He has been saying for a long time that he was going to leave the government if the agreement happens under the conditions that it is taking place. So that was more than expected. Ben-Gvir, in this sense, I would say he knows what he is doing, and perhaps he's trying to replicate quote unquote, the success of Netanyahu from 20 years ago prior to the Gaza disengagement. Ben-Gvir is looking at the day after Netanyahu. And all those people who are frustrated with the current deal, they'll be flocking to Ben-Gvir at the next legislative election. So this was a rather calculated move on Ben-Gvir's part. For Netanyahu, what I think is going to be even more troubling is the discontent within the Likud party itself. Whilst he traditionally had great hold of the party, there are people disagreeing with the deal within Likud, and I think it will be quite hard for him to turn these people back to support him.
What can be the outcome of this ceasefire for more globally for both Donald Trump's administration, which is just taking over, and for our region, for Central and Eastern Europe?
I would start by looking at the wider region. So there could be some very positive outcome. That is from Saudi Arabia, especially if the Trump administration, if they're willing to negotiate with them. And that's something that they did show in the past, the last time Donald Trump was in power. So Saudi Arabia could feel they could be quite receptive to the deal, and they could be happy with the deal. And as such, they would be more willing to make a peace deal with Israel. Which is perhaps one of the things that got derailed before or in the aftermath of the October the 7th massacre. So we could see a peace in the Middle East in terms of Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel, and some significant concessions to the Palestinian people and the path towards a Palestinian statehood. Again, we shall see what the Trump administration and Saudi Arabia, what they will do on this topic. As for Central Europe, I think there will be some impact on Central Europe as well, because I think we have to look at, first of all, at the wider strategic implications and what I like to call axis of evil 2.0 and the ties between authoritarian, undemocratic regimes, mainly Russia, Iran, China, North Korea. If peace prevails, in the Middle East and Iran is less powerful, this will also send a message to Russia, and of course, this could have impact on the ongoing illegal Russian war in Ukraine, having impact in turn on, Central Europe as well.
Thank you so much. Veronika Poniscjakova, Senior Teaching Fellow, University of Portsmouth, was our guest this morning. Thank you so much, madam.
Always my pleasure.
That concludes this edition of World Talks. Stay tuned to TVP World. We're coming just right after.